Welcome into Words with Wallace. I'm your host, Nick Wallace. Coming at you, it's Thursday, March 12th. And what a week we've had in the NBA. Some weeks, not gonna lie, not a lot to talk about. Usual slate of games, maybe you have a couple good matchups, and I'm trying to think what topics to talk about, but not this week. We had the return of Jayson Tatum a bit earlier than even I anticipated that we have to dive into, and now we have a 3-game sample size of Tatum back in the lineup. We had maybe the game of the year between the Nuggets and the Thunder on Monday night. That was an incredible matchup. Feel like SGA probably sealed up the MVP, so we need to talk about the implications of that game. And maybe what I was most excited about this week was the matchup between the Celtics and the Spurs on Tuesday night. Was going to try to make it down to San Antonio for the game. Wasn't able to do that, but I was seated. I was locked in for that game. And then I find out that I'm getting text messages. I see that Bam Adebayo has 31 points in the first quarter against the Wizards. I'm like, okay, I'm monitoring it. I'm still watching the Celtics, whatever. And then it just keeps going. He's got 40, he's got 50, he's got 60 before the end of the third quarter. So I'm like, all right, I got to take out the laptop. I got to get the second screen going. And then I get sucked into this Wizards game on a Tuesday night because Bam's making history. And he ends up scoring 83 points. So obviously, we're going to dive into how the hell that happened, implications for him breaking, not necessarily the all-time record. We know that belongs to Wilt with 100 points, but Kobe Bryant's more recent record of 81 points that stood for over 20 years. So we're going to dive into all that, so hopefully you guys enjoy. Now, obviously, we have to start off with Bam Adebayo's big game because he scored, again, 83 points in a game that did not go into overtime. It was obviously pretty non-competitive because the Washington Wizards were involved, but he still scored 83 points in the game on Tuesday night in Miami, and nobody saw anything close to this coming, right? I mean, we've honestly had like a pretty light season when it comes to like really high-scoring performances. I think before Tuesday night, the season high of anybody this year was Jokic with like 55 or 56. I guess Kawhi had a 55-point game as well, but I think it was Jokic who scored 56 on Christmas, if I'm not mistaken, against the Timberwolves, something like that. But look, we've had nobody hit 60, certainly nobody hit 70, and then Bam Adebayo, of all people, goes out and scores 83 points. A guy that didn't even make the All-Star team. There was an All-Star from the Miami Heat. It was Norm Powell, who didn't end up playing in that game on Tuesday night. I had Bam for the All-Star team. We'll do a quick pat on the back for that because I don't think it's a secret that even in a down season, and he had his offensive struggles early in the year, that Bam is clearly the best player on the Miami Heat, in my opinion. And he came ready to play on Tuesday night. He had his girlfriend, very famously, Aja Wilson, the best player in the WNBA there courtside. He had his mom there courtside in the custom Bam Adebayo jersey. And I was pretty happy for the guy. I mean, I love Bam Adebayo, like, as much as I really can of a player that plays for the Miami Heat with how much they've played my Celtics in the playoffs over the past 7 or so years. I just feel like that guy is so really underrated just with what he can do defensively. That's what he's known for. But when you have a guy that's averaging 19 points per game on the season, and then he goes out and drops 83, more than doubles his career high, we have to dive into it. So, again, I checked in late in like the third quarter and then had it on in a second screen in the fourth quarter. But once he ended up breaking the record and the Celtics game, they ended up falling short to the Spurs. I was like, all right, I got to watch this whole thing back so I can be prepared. And that's what I did. You know, you fire up the game on League Pass, you can skip through all the ads. And so that's how I spent my Tuesday night. Just to give you guys the context, I think the most impressive stretch of the entire game was the first quarter when Bam had 31 points right off the rip. The Wizards at that point are semi-competitive, right? They have their best players out there. Actually, through the first couple minutes of the game, it felt like we were going to have like a really fun battle between Bam and Alex Sarr, who was pretty dominant offensively in his own right, and they were just kind of going back and forth through the first 7 minutes. But he shot 20 of 43 from the field, right? So he was actually less than 50%. He shot about 47% from the field in a game in which he scored 83 points. Reason being is he shot 43 free throw attempts. 43 free throw attempts. He was 36 of 43, shot 84% from the line, and finished with a stat line of 83 points, 9 rebounds, and had like 3 assists in there, a couple blocks and steals as well. So after Bam goes out and scores 31 points in the first quarter, he actually does sit for like a 6-minute stretch to start the second. Right when he checks back into the game, he immediately gets a bucket, passes his season high halfway through the second quarter when he has like 32 or 33 points at this point in time. And he just kind of kept it rolling. Now, obviously, most of the damage was done at the free throw line because especially without those stretches of Alex Sarr in the game, like the Wizards just had nobody physically even close to Bam. I think their tallest player was like Will Riley, who's like kind of a twig out there, does have a pretty butter jump shot. That was probably the first time I actually watched Will Riley in depth for a full game this season. But like Tristan Vucevic and like this Anthony Gill guy who's like some journeyman, like the Wizards just have absolute bums, respectfully, at least on the defensive end of the court, that are trying to stay in front of Bam. And once he rips through on that first step and he has you on his hip, he's just blowing right. He's too strong. And so the guys have to reach in. And you can say that it's unethical because of the free throw attempts and how ridiculous it is that most nights NBA teams don't shoot a total of 43 free throws. Like that's way higher than the average team on a given night. And that's what Bam was able to amass individually. But if you watch all of the fouls back, I actually saw some of these clips on social media today, they're all pretty legit. I mean, there was one, maybe two questionable calls throughout the entire game that I felt like were probably bullshit, but he was getting that whistle all night and it was for good reason. And so you got to think about the competitiveness and the lack thereof from the Washington Wizards in this one. I mean, I would say I saw the first effort of a double team with like 4 minutes left in the third quarter, and he had in like the high 50s at this point. So that's when the Wizards had their first like hint of pride, is when a guy in Bam Adebayo has 50-something points late in the third quarter, and he ends up setting the franchise record before the end of the third. When he had 62 points. I think LeBron had the previous franchise record with 60 or something like that. And as we head into the fourth quarter, again, Bam ended up playing the entire second half. That like 6 or 7 minute stretch in the second quarter was the only time he was on the bench all game long. And things got pretty crazy in the fourth quarter, right? He ends up scoring his last field goal with just 3.5 minutes left in the game. So I think that put him at like 75 points or something in that vicinity. He had to get the last 7 or 8 points from the free throw line. And shit really hit the fan when Eric Spoelstra, coach of the Miami Heat, ends up challenging a charge call on Bam Adebayo. He basically barreled through 2 people, but it was a pretty obvious charge in the moment. But at the same time, the camera cuts over to Spo. He's just kind of laughing and smiling on the sideline, and you're like, wow, they're really going for this. Like, Spo's in on it, Bam's in on it, like he's going to play the rest of the game. And the challenge ends up being unsuccessful, but that seemed to set something off with Washington. Again, like roughly 3 minutes left in this game. Once Spo's like challenging, and again, the game's out of reach because Washington completely sucks. Miami's been up 20 the entire time. The next offensive possession for the Heat, Bam ends up getting fouled by somebody on Washington. Washington returns the favor. They end up challenging that call. It's also unsuccessful. And from that point forward, like the last 2 or 3 minutes, it's just like bedlam. I mean, there's 3 guys just trying to prevent Bam Adebayo from getting the ball inbounded to him in the backcourt. At one point, Keyshawn Johnson actually gets fouled off the ball. They foul somebody that's not Bam Adebayo to try to prevent him from breaking the record. Keyshawn Johnson goes to the free throw line. He makes the first one and then intentionally misses the second one to just try to get the ball to Bam. So everybody's in on it at this point. They're funneling touches to Bam. Miami on defense at that point is fouling right away. That way they just send Washington to the free throw line or just allow them an open layup. That way Miami can get the ball back. And it basically worked out for the Heat, right? I mean, he ends up getting to the free throw line with 79 points, knocks down 2 to tie Kobe. It's at this point in the game where the announcers are starting to say, oh, it looks like Bam's going to be checking out here. He wants to share this number with Kobe Bryant. Nope. Bam ends up staying in the game. Washington's still trying to foul off the ball. They're still trying to triple team Bam. Miami somehow finds a way to get Bam the ball, and he just charges at the basket. I'm not going to lie, the last point came with like a minute left in the game, the last free throw attempts, and that last foul was complete and utter horseshit if you want to call out any of the fouls. The contact that was there was basically marginal, and Bam was the one who initiated all of it. But look, he goes to the free throw line, he knocks down the last 2 free throws, he sets the record with 83 points, and he ends up checking out with less than a minute left in the game. In totality, the last 5 minutes of that game was just pure comedy. It really reminded me of like things I would do when I had like my player back in the day, or would create a player on like 2K or even Madden. In Madden, it's the equivalent of when you would just go into like field goal block on defense. That way you could just get the ball back on offense and then like chuck it up to your best receiver, your best player, whoever you were trying to stat pad with. And honestly, my biggest take is I totally understand where Bam Adebayo and even Coach Eric Spoelstra are coming from. It was an awesome night. I don't watch the Heat closely enough to know if Aja Wilson and Bam's mom and his whole crew were front row for like every home Heat game. I really have no idea, but it did feel like something was in the air that night, especially with how well he was playing right from the jump. He had this aggressiveness to him, and I can't blame Bam Adebayo for trying to break the record. Maybe there's some people out there that thought it was kind of Bush League, that with the way that the game ended and the fact that he didn't just accept getting to 81 points and sharing that with Kobe, and he felt the need to break that record, even though it's, again, not a real record because Wilt has that with 100 points. But I would totally want to break that record. If I'm that close and played that long, yes, the game was over. Yes, it was a completely non-competitive team on the other side of things. But what are we really talking about here? If you have the chance to be etched alongside the names of Kobe Bryant and Wilt Chamberlain as the best single game performances ever, why would you not want to do that? Now, analyzing the result of it is a little bit different. Like, I totally understand anybody out there that is pretty bummed to see Kobe Bryant passed up by Bam Adebayo, who's obviously a way lesser player, especially on the offensive end of the court. Like, it just kind of made sense that Kobe had the best scoring night in this modern era of basketball that really anybody in this lifetime remembers, right? I mean, we didn't even have footage of Wilt's 100-point game. And it just was so fitting that Kobe, who you could really make the argument he's the best scorer ever. I don't know if I would go that far, but you want to talk about a guy that has all the same skills as Jordan and then also was a little bit better of a three-point shooter. So you can definitely make that argument. It was fitting that he was the one that scored 81 points in the modern NBA. And when you see Bam Adebayo's name up there, it just doesn't make sense, but I'm all for it. Sure, the way that the last few minutes of the game played out was insane, and they were clearly going for the record. The whole team was on board. Coach Spoelstra was on board. Like, that much was evident. But he still had to go out there and actually do it. And all the fouls, besides maybe the last one, were pretty legit. And so anybody that's complaining and upset about this, like because they're a Kobe fan or because they just respect Kobe a lot more than they respect Bam Adebayo, like, I get it. I'm not going to lie. I was really excited watching the game in real time. And I'm like, wow, I want to see how high he can go. And I just wanted him to score more points. And then when he did get to 81, I was like, oh, like, do I really want him to break Kobe's record here? Like, I didn't want to in real time, but again, I respect it. I see where Bam is coming from, and it doesn't take away from what Kobe had, right? Yes, now he has the third best scoring performance ever, but that record still held up for 20 plus years, and I didn't think I would ever see that get broken. I'm not here thinking that somebody else is going to surpass Bam even. Like, these scoring nights are really hard to come by. And so you can be upset that Bam passed Kobe, and you can think Bam's stat line was a lot more unethical than Kobe's. I get all that, but you need to direct that anger toward the Washington Wizards. You can't direct it toward Bam. You can't direct it toward Spoelstra. The Wizards are an NBA team that is playing in what I believe is the most talented era of NBA basketball yet, because the game just continues to advance. Why the fuck did Alex Sarr, the only guy that physically had a chance to stop Bam Adebayo, only play 6 minutes in the second half? He's 20 years old, and he was having a phenomenal game. Like, Alex Sarr in his own right, I think he had 20-something in the first half and only finished the game with 28 points because he barely played. Now, technically, he's on a minutes restriction because he has a sore hamstring or whatever, but I don't buy that. I don't buy the injury report of a Washington team that's actively trying to lose games. Have some pride. Put him in the game. He's 20 years old. He had 2 blocks earlier in that game, one of them against Bam Adebayo. And look, he was getting cooked by Bam most of the first quarter, so I'm not saying he would have maybe changed exactly how it went down, but he at least would have given you a shot. Direct all your anger, all your animosity toward how unethical it was toward the Washington Wizards, because it's embarrassing. But shout out to Bam Adebayo. That was truly awesome. If you want to compare it to Kobe's game, I mean, Kobe obviously shot a lot better from the field. He was 28 of 46 in his 81-point effort. He did get to the free throw line quite a bit, but it was less than half of the free throw attempts of Bam. Bam shot 43 free throws. Kobe shot 20 in that game. He was 18 of 20. He was 7 of 13 for 3. So yes, Kobe was more efficient, but it's not like Kobe did it against some loaded team either. I mean, the Raptors that year finished with a season record of 27 and 55. I looked it up before this. So, I mean, yes, that's better than what the Washington Wizards will be this year. I mean, the Washington's probably going to finish the season around 20 wins, and so they're significantly worse than that '06 Raptors team or whatever. But look, anytime somebody scores north of 60, 70 points, the whole team needs to be on board with it. You're not just going to get a special performance, and you're not going to be ethically scoring north of 70 points ever, especially in the modern NBA. So it's going to take a lot of effort from your teammates, from your coach, and a truly pathetic effort on the other side of the ball. And that's everything that culminated on Tuesday night. So in general, I am bummed to see Bam pass Kobe, but I'm happy for the guy. And the last thing I'll add on this, because this was a quote that came out from Eric Spoelstra earlier today, and I am paraphrasing here, but in a press conference, he was asked about the performance, and basically he said, I apologize to absolutely nobody, right? Like, we're playing against a team that is actively trying to lose games. And so I looked at Bam, especially in a game in which Tyler Herro wasn't playing, Norman Powell wasn't playing. They're down guys. They're not trying to drop a game to a bad team. I asked Bam Adebayo to be ready to play. And that's exactly what Bam Adebayo went out and did. And I thought that was an awesome, again, I'm not going to call it a quote from Spoelstra because I'm paraphrasing there, but I thought he crushed it. And I think more teams should go out there and try to embarrass tanking teams anytime that they have the opportunity to do so. Let's keep it moving and talk about maybe the game of the year that we had on Monday night between the Denver Nuggets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, this is always a game that you're going to have dog-eared on the calendar. Maybe the two best teams in the NBA. Certainly the two teams I would peg as the best teams in the NBA heading into the season. This game was in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City was down a few players, right? We didn't have Chet Holmgren active for this one. We didn't have Jalen Williams active for this game. We didn't even have Isaiah Hartenstein active for this game. Whereas on the Denver side of things, the only player that they were missing was Peyton Watson. So Denver has been in a bit of a nosedive lately. Again, Jokic just has not been the same player since he's returned from injury. Cam Johnson still seems as broken as ever. And even in this game, I think he ended up shooting 1 of 5 and had a couple really awful defensive errors that I noticed as well. I just kind of figured at some point the guy was too talented on the Nets and even the Suns before that, where I felt like at some point he would work his way out of the slump this season, but he just seems like a broken player. Like, what does he even really do out there? He's not rebounding the ball. He's not giving you much at all on the defensive end of the court, and teams are barely respecting him at this point. And I just see him like waving his arms like a complete asshole on offense half the time when he's not even open, as if he's on like an absolute heater. And honestly, Denver should have gotten completely blown out of this game if it wasn't for the incredibly hot shooting of Tim Hardaway Jr. in this one. But it was an awesome game. Comes down to the wire. It was back and forth. Oklahoma City was in control for most of it. Jalen Williams did a fantastic job subbing in for Hartenstein and Chet, and I think he hit 7+ threes and finished with 20-something points. He was unbelievable in this game, but it was really the end, and I will spoil this for you guys. Basically, OKC was up 1 with, I think, less than 20 seconds left in the game. They had to get a shot up because the shot clock was winding down, and so they're up 1. Shai has the ball at the top of the key, gets an isolation, step back, and drills a 3 to put them up 4. And OKC, the crowd is going nuts. Shai's hyping everybody up. He's feeling it. He had an unbelievable game in which he finished with like 35 points, I think 15 assists and 9 rebounds. So almost a really impressive triple-double there with a couple great blocks and some steals as well. And so that felt like his crowning moment, and it felt like the game was over. 15 seconds left in the game at this point. And somehow Denver draws up a play. They get the ball to Jokic at the top of the key. Jamal Murray setting a screen on Jalen Williams to give Jokic a little bit of space to get the 3 off, and Jalen Williams just blows through him right as Jokic was going up with the shot. The shot goes in, so the bucket counts, and there's a foul off the ball, which gives Jamal Murray a free throw, which gives Denver the opportunity to tie the game, and that's exactly what they did. So there was the high of this emotion where like it was back and forth all game long. It was a really high-scoring game, and then you have this moment where OKC's up 4. Denver answers with this miracle 4-point play, but there's like just enough time for OKC to get a look. They get the ball into Shai. He's moving to his right side. He's got Spencer Jones on him, and he drills another step-back 3, basically as time expires to give OKC the win. And this was, I mean, Shai's had some unbelievable games in his career. He had that crazy stretch where he scored like 50 every other game for a couple weeks last year, it felt like. And so I don't necessarily want to say this was the best game of Shai's career, and he had some awesome performances in the playoffs, but this might be the most memorable. For him to go out and actually hit what essentially was 2 game-winning shots in this game against Denver, a team that they went 7 games against last year, like, that was special. And I do care about the MVP. I try to be as unbiased as possible. If I had a vote, who I would give that out to, but I feel like the MVP is basically over. I mean, Shai's played in 54 games. It's more likely than not that OKC is going to be a 1 seed again. And he's just been so consistent. Was likely going to come down to him and Jokic. And with OKC, I think, being, 3-0 against Denver this year so far, and basically every single one of those games, Shai has significantly outplayed Jokic. I mean, was not a scrub by any means in that game, but he wasn't as good as SGA, especially when you consider the defensive contributions and the way that Shai just iced that game. I would say that the MVP is basically over. I mean, he has it locked up, and I'm even willing to open the conversation up to, like, he didn't just seal the MVP. He might have grabbed the belt for the best player in the world as well. It's hard to say because I think Jokic is a very different type of player, and I think offensively, like the engine that he is to that entire Denver offense is still more valuable probably than Shai, even what he gives the offense, but there's just something about the way that Shai can just get any spot he wants. He's incredibly clutch. He's doing it from all three levels. It feels like the three-point shooting is leveled up. He's not just foul baiting. Anybody that calls Shai a foul baiter isn't really watching how skilled that he is getting to his spots at all three levels. And so it was truly an unbelievable game. And it was something that OKC I felt like really needed. It feels like the Spurs, I don't want to spend a ton of time on them for this episode today anyways, but they have been rolling lately, one of the best teams in the NBA, and they have clearly made it known to me and everybody else that they are contenders. And so the Spurs were gaining a lot of traction even as Denver was kind of falling down in the standings. And so OKC, despite all the injuries, needed to have this moment to remind everybody why they should be the favorites to win the title this year. So the other end of the ball, I mean, I already talked about my frustrations with Cam Johnson. I did honestly just feel bad for Christian Braun in this game. I mean, he played 36 minutes and was just getting absolutely fried by Shai every single time. And they were trying to double him at the end of games. And it did kind of allow Denver to creep back into the game because they forced the ball out of Shai's hands a few times. And they ended up leaving Isaiah Joe open for a three, and that didn't convert. And Aaron Gordon wasn't the best effort from him. I know he's still working his way back from his hamstring injury, and at least he's back in the lineup. But again, he hasn't looked like the same guy. Jokic hasn't looked like the same guy since the injury. We still don't have Peyton Watson back in the lineup. And I think Denver dropped all the way down to the 6th seed in the Western Conference with that loss to OKC. So that puts them in a really tough spot for the playoffs. We'll evaluate. We just did our tier rankings in the last podcast. So once we get a little bit closer to the playoffs, we can kind of update who I think still belongs in that contender tier. I'd still have Denver there for now, but it was a massive statement win for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I think Shai has basically locked up the MVP at this point. Assuming he doesn't have any crazy injury or anything like that, I feel like that's the only thing that would prevent him from walking away with his second consecutive MVP. And finally, we need to talk about the return of Jayson Tatum. So I guess you can say this is another segment of Celtics Corner. Feel like that's deserved at this point since Tatum's been on all over the national headlines since he returned against the Mavericks last Friday. And it was perfect timing. I mean, a little bit earlier than what I thought. I mean, I've been saying March all year long, but I was kind of thinking mid to maybe even late March. But the fact that he played in whatever that was, like March 5th or something like that, March 6th, that was awesome to have him back out there. And we really needed it because we needed to distract people from the fact that the Hornets came into our building the previous game and then absolutely clapped us. We're not going to talk about that Hornets game. That was ugly. But he returned against the Mavericks last Friday at home. And the buzz that he was not just starting the game, but he wasn't going to have a minutes restriction had me hyped. I was like, this guy's coming back. You guys all saw the quote, I'm sure, of Jayson Tatum from whatever weird documentary commercial media series he had going on where he's like, I'm not coming back to be no role player, doc, when he's talking to one of his doctors. And so that had me fired up. Now, he was on a minutes restriction. He ended up playing 27 minutes in that game. He's not quite at the threshold where we can expect from Jayson Tatum, but that'd actually just be irresponsible if we went out there and played him like 30 plus minutes in his first game back. But he finished the game shooting 6 of 16. He was 3 of 8 from 3, finished with 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and he had a steal in there as well. And overall, he looked awesome. I mean, the first half was a bit rocky, right? He didn't have a bucket, didn't have a single point in the first half. The missed dunk as well, that wasn't great, but it was all worth it for that crowd pop early in the second half where he had the putback dunk off the missed layup. He had a step back 3 on the next consecutive play, and the Garden is just going apeshit. And I feel like, again, for the most part, he looked like himself. All the little things that Jayson Tatum brings to the table, even when he's not having the best shooting night, were on full display. Mainly his playmaking, which was evident right from the start of the game. You could see the Mavericks giving him a little bit of extra attention. He had a couple nice lobs to Keita. His rebounding as well. The fact that, again, he amassed 12 rebounds in this game is really helpful. There was a huge missed opportunity for a pretty sick poster moment when Jaylen Brown and Tatum were on a fast break, and Jaylen had the ball and nearly killed Tatum with a pretty bad lob attempt. Now, prime Tatum probably gets to that ball and finishes it. It wasn't just Brown's fault, but I was like, we couldn't have had like a money pass there because it was a 2-on-1 fast break. The only one back for the Mavericks was Cooper Flagg. I'm like, that would have been an awesome shot. Tatum's first game back. Brown to Tatum with Flagg in the picture. Kind of like that Wade LeBron picture is what I was envisioning when the fast break started. Didn't go down like that, but that's all right. I should note that this was Cooper Flagg's first game in Boston. It wasn't the best Cooper Flagg game as he's rehabbing from his own foot injury, but it was pretty awesome to have the entire state of Maine there to welcome him. Apparently he had a ton of people in attendance, and so we're just trying to plant that seed for the first time Cooper gets the taste of free agency so he can come home to Boston. We would love to have him. The last thing I want to know about Tatum's first game back is it was a pretty tough loss to have Vucevic break his finger or something along the lines in the game. He played for literally like a minute or two off the bench and immediately hurt his hand, and apparently he's going to be out a month with this finger injury. So we should see him again. Hopefully that leaves the door open for him to play a handful of games in the regular season before we get into the playoffs. It would be pretty tough to reacclimate him right in round one. I mean, we should have a pretty good matchup, but we get matched up with Charlotte or somebody dangerous in the first round. I'd like to have the rotation all tight and locked in. And it's been a pretty tough Vucevic experience so far, and this finger injury isn't going to help anything. So that is a bummer, because when we're talking about like the Celtics ceiling, the fact that I was thinking we might have Anthony Simons down the stretch, and then we make that deal at the deadline. We bring in Vucevic to solidify that backup big position behind Keita. He's probably still an upgrade over Garza, as much as we've loved the play from Garza. But it feels like this trade is just nothing burger, right? I mean, Simons, I believe, like broke his wrist, or he's probably out for the rest of the year for the Bulls. And now it looks like Vucevic is going to miss basically the rest of the regular season with this finger injury. So tough break, but it was kind of lightened by the fact that Tatum came back and looked great. So moving on to the next Celtics game, it is worth noting we had an awesome win over the Cavs on Sunday. It was a team effort across the board. We were basically in control and ended up polishing off the Cavs by 10 points. That was basically what we were up the entire game anyways, and I think at some point we were even up 20. And so the fact that we went into Cleveland, Tatum again looked pretty good in this one, and great team win across the board. But I was probably most impressed with Shireman's contributions off the bench as well. I thought he was awesome in that game. Nice of him to adjust to coming right back off the bench and hit some shots, played with a lot of energy on defense. So we've loved the Shireman, his leap and ascension this season. It was nice to see Tatum still own Mobley on a couple drives, like blowing right by him to the basket. You know, former defensive player of the year, Evan Mobley, of course. People love blowing smoke up that guy's ass. But we did see a little bit more out of Jayson Tatum defensively in that game. And then finally for Cleveland, I mean, it was an awesome Donovan Mitchell game. He was unbelievable in this one and somehow was like a +8 in the box score, despite the fact that Cleveland was down like all game long. They just totally bombed the non-Mitchell minutes, but it didn't end up mattering. No Jared Allen in that one, but still really nice to go into Cleveland and beat a pretty hot team there in the Cavs. Finally, the last game that we have to talk about is the game that we had against the Spurs on Tuesday night, which I was very excited for. The game was in San Antonio. Obviously had to multitask once Bam started going crazy, so I watched a little bit of that one on the laptop. But look, we have to start with Jalen's ejection in that game against the San Antonio Spurs. He ended up getting ejected with consecutive technicals pretty late in the second quarter. He felt like he was pushed out of bounds by Stephon Castle. He's bitching to the ref. The ref let him go for a little bit, but he kept going, gets the first technical, and then the other referee from across the court came in while Jaylen Brown was still going a little bit after he got that tee, and he got a pretty quick second technical there that ended up getting him ejected. And honestly, like, a lot of people were defending Jaylen because they're like, oh, it was up to the first official that teed him up to make the decision if he wants to bounce him out of the game, and I get that. But for his reaction, he was pretty out of pocket, if you ask me, especially when you consider the foul that he was complaining about where Castle maybe pushed him out of bounds a little bit. Like, I know in replay, it's hard to tell because when everything's in slow motion, it's hard to pick up how much momentum is being transferred from Castle to Brown, but it seemed like barely anything. It seemed like a pretty light call. So I don't really know why he lost his top like that so early in a game, because I would have loved to see how the rest of that game would have played out if Jaylen had just stayed in it. He was playing pretty well. And I would also have loved to see Peyton Pritchard out there. He missed the game because of a neck injury, I guess. But he was out of the game. He was bounced, and the Celtics had to do without him. But we ended up sticking around in the game, and that's why I feel like this was, you know, if we can call it a good loss, I do feel like it was a good loss for the Celtics to play against a really tough team when we were undermanned in San Antonio like that. It was incredible from Derek White. I mean, he finished the game with 34 points, and I was most impressed with the way that he handled the ball pressure, right? Like, Derek White, as much as I love him, he's got a pretty unique handle, right? It feels like he dribbles the ball really high. None of his moves, like ball handling wise, are that flashy, but it is nice to see him just be the primary ball handler for such a large stretch of the game. That would have been too much to ask Tatum to do that. And you're dealing with guys like Stephon Castle who are picking him up full court. White basically has to step in as the point guard for a lot of those possessions. And with how well he played, and he even had a couple layups in the paint with Wemby like on his back where he had to like cat and mouse it and time when he thought Wemby was going to leap. And you're at such a strict disadvantage there. Like, you don't really see anybody in the entire NBA score in the paint when Wemby has 2 feet there ready to go. He's locked in. And White somehow came away with 2 really awesome finishes with Wemby in the vicinity. So that was pretty awesome. Now, ultimately, the Celtics ended up falling short in this one, and the Spurs ended up winning by 10 or so points. But there's not much you can do when Wemby's shooting like that. I mean, he finished the game with 39 points and 8 threes. I mean, he was really letting them fly. And does it really matter if you have a guy like Keita or Garza like chase him around to 30 feet? Like at that point, all we're doing is pulling our big out of the paint and risking that Wemby's not only going to blow by you because he's probably quicker than our bigs, he definitely has a better handle. And then you throw in the fact that like even if you're out that far, like you're not contesting his jump shot anyway. Keita is still giving up 4 inches on the guy, and even more than that when you include his reach and how high he shoots the ball. So I really don't know what you're supposed to do, and that's what makes the Spurs so dangerous. I mean, you could even make the argument, I just got done saying on my last segment that Shai might be the best player in the world now, but you could make just as strong of an argument for Wemby, right? Like, I think Shai's the MVP because he's played a little bit more games. He's been definitely more consistent, especially on the offensive end of the court. But the ceiling that Wemby has showcased over the past couple weeks is really out of control, and it's obviously on both ends of the court, and that was an awesome Wemby game. So, final notes on that matchup against the Spurs is that Ron Harper Jr. is a stud. It was really awesome to see him step up, being down Brown for most of the game, being down Peyton Pritchard, steps into a larger role. He's playing against his younger brother, who of course is Dylan Harper, number 2 overall pick in this past year's draft, and he outplayed his little brother, even though his little brother's a lot more talented. Ron Harper finished the game with like 20-something points. He was hitting outside shots, made some great defensive plays, and this has just been a masterclass season from Brad Stevens. Like, he can't miss from top to bottom. You look at guys like Garza and Gonzalez and Keita and Ron Harper Jr., like Jordan Walsh, all these guys that he's acquired or drafted from like the past 3 or 4 years. All of these guys are playing such an important part of the rotation. I do feel a little bad for Jordan Walsh. I'm not going to lie. I feel like he's probably gotten market corrected by Ron Harper Jr. at this point, right? Like it feels like Harper gives you a lot of the same energy on defense and definitely has a more consistent outside shot. You already have Hugo Gonzalez in the mix as well, who's been awesome energy piece off the bench for the Celtics all year long. So it does feel like, just like Minot earlier in the season, at this point, Jordan Walsh, I don't expect him to get a ton of burn down the stretch, but you never really know. Guys miss games here and there. So really awesome to have Tatum back. It totally makes sense that we are maybe now the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference. I checked the odds earlier today, and most sites had us as the favorites, especially when you consider the recent struggles from the Detroit. They've lost a couple of games. Cade's been banged up here and there. They blew a 25-point lead at home to the Nets. I know Cade wasn't playing in that one, but they've had a couple other tough losses as well. And the book's kind of out on Detroit, right? I mean, they're an incredible team. They have the youth. They have the defense. They have an awesome hub of their offense in Cade Cunningham. Duran stepped up big, but if you cut off the head of the snake, so to speak, was Cade, I just don't know who else is creating offense on that team. And now that the Celtics have Jayson Tatum back in the mix, you have Jaylen Brown, you have Jayson Tatum, you have Derek White, you have Peyton Pritchard, you have 4 guys that can create offense consistently on the Boston Celtics. Detroit doesn't have that. So anybody that's picking the Celtics to come out of the East, I really can't blame you, because as much as I figured Tatum was going to come back this season, I didn't think he was going to come back this soon, and I didn't think he was going to be this good this soon. So we have plenty of time to analyze the Celtics as we have about a month left in the regular season here at this point, but very good week for Celtics fans, and I'm very excited to see how tonight's game goes against OKC. I hate recording before we have a big matchup that I'm really looking forward to, but I didn't want to get this out too late, and I do want to bring you guys a podcast this week, so I'll be logging off here in a little bit to watch the OKC game. I think Jayson Tatum's out, and we just got word that Derek White's going to be out as well, so it's going to be tough to go into Oklahoma City and beat a team that's been playing really well lately, but we'll see how that goes, and if something crazy happens, I might have to add onto this podcast to talk about that OKC game. So that's going to do it for this episode of Words with Wallace. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, awesome week in the NBA. Psyched that it felt like we were really focused on tanking and a lot of the negative storylines associated with the NBA right after the All-Star break and everything like that, and it feels like the league has picked up quite a bit. Obviously, some tanking storylines still floating around out there when you're asking how a team in the Washington Wizards gives up 83 points to a guy in Bam Adebayo, but that's kind of deserved at this point. I think that might be a good wake-up call for some of these other tanking teams, and maybe Washington even shows a little bit more drive down the stretch here because they're so embarrassed, as they should be. But either way, we should have another podcast for you guys coming next week. I do need to bring on my guy Sean at some point in the near future. Maybe I'll think of another gimmick to bring you guys in the next episode. But in the meantime, be sure to check out At Words with Wallace on everything. That includes Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow the show on social media. That's At Words with Wallace on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I'm on all those sites. So be sure to follow the show there. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.